Hey guys, we are live. My name is Jessica. If you are just stumbling upon this video, I am a pet parent coach and positive reinforcement dog trainer. Welcome. I'm so glad to have you here. Whether you are watching this right now with me live or you're watching the recording later, let me know you are here. I want to hear from you. Post in the chat or later on in the comment section. I want to know that you're watching, where you're from, and what kind of pets you have. I would love to hear from you. So go ahead, and if you're watching live, go ahead and post in the chat now to let me know you're here. So today we have a big topic. We're talking about aflatoxins in pet food, but really even more than that, we're talking about recalls in pet food, because there are so many, like at any given time, there are so many going on. The public doesn't even really know about them. A lot of times, social media that has helped people become more aware of these things. But yeah, so let's just get right into, actually really quick before we get into it. If you are new here and you look down there, that subscribe button, if it's red, click it and turn it gray, and then click the bell, select all notifications, and then YouTube can actually notify you anytime I post a new video or if I go live on my channel, so you don't have to come searching for them. A really cool feature. And if at any point during this video you like the content, make sure you give it a thumbs up to let YouTube know, and it really helps my channel grow as well. So glad to be here with you today live. It is Sunday. Let me just double check. I think it's the 24th. Yes, January 24th, 2021. So yes, we covered all of that. I will, today I am actually doing something a little bit crazy, and it's actually going to be posted on my other channel, so make sure to check the description. There are tons of links in the description. When this video is over, there's my link tree, and you can actually get a link to my other channel as well. I'm going to be doing the one chip challenge later on today and recording it, of course, for my other channel, which is completely insane. So make sure you check out that channel and subscribe as well. It's called Home Sweet Farmhouse, and it's kind of a little bit different from anything else I've ever done on that channel. But anyway, just wanted to mention that for you guys to check out. So aflatoxins in pet food. If you're feeding your pet kibble, there are so many things I want to say. First of all, if you haven't seen the documentary called Pet Food, it's like pet food, but it's Fooled, F-O-O-L-E-D. I would definitely recommend watching it. As far as I know, it's still available for free to you on Netflix. I think I own it. Let me see if I own it. Let me just check. Ooh. I should have checked beforehand. Yes. Here we go. It's called Pet Food. I do own it, but I believe you can watch it for free on Netflix. This can really, if you have never heard anything about, or if you haven't even considered feeding a fresh food diet or a raw food diet, or you just think that kibble is the best food you can feed, or you just don't know of any other way, you just thought kibble is what we're supposed to feed our pets, I would definitely recommend checking out this documentary. I think they might be coming out with a second one. I know they were working on it. But this one was so popular that the producer, the big pet food companies have been all over him trying to get him to not be able to put out another one. So I would definitely recommend that. In the comments, oh, hey, JR, thank you so much for being here. You're doing the one chip challenge. You are tough. I don't know how tough I am. I am going to be doing the one chip challenge. Of course, that's over on my other channel, so check my link tree if you want to get over on my other channel. It's called Home Sweet Farmhouse. I don't know how tough I am, but I guess we'll find out. Yes, thank you so much for commenting as well. I definitely want to hear from anybody who's watching, whether you're watching this live or if you watch this recording later on. Definitely want to know you're here. Let me know about you and your pets. Let me know where you're from. Let me know what you feed your pets. I would love to hear from you, so definitely post out. If you post now live, I'll definitely call out your comment, answer any questions. I'd love to hear from you. So yes, if you haven't heard of Pet Food, if you haven't watched it, I would absolutely recommend watching it. Like I said, I believe it is free on Netflix. Yeah, I actually, maybe when COVID is over, can do like a watch party. I don't know, but I would definitely recommend it. So at any given time, there are tons of recalls going on, whether it has to do with pet food or human food or just any other products out there. Right now, there there's actually two big recalls, but the one that has been going on the longest so far, that is still unresolved, it is for Midwestern pet foods, and it's on their sport mix. So let me just double check here. Last I heard, it was at least 70 dogs have died and dozens more were sick. So there has been a lawsuit filed, and just so we know we're on the same page, this particular recall is for aflatoxins, which is the title of this video, because people are all of a sudden seeing this word and they're like, what is that? Aflatoxins, and this is according to the FDA, aflatoxins are toxins produced by a specific kind of mold, and I'm going to totally mess this up, but I'm going to try to say it. Aspergillus flavus, I believe. I could be wrong about that, but I may be saying it wrong, but that's the mold. So it's a toxin produced by this mold, and at high levels can cause illness and death in pets. The toxins can be present even if there's no visible mold, and I think that's what kind of makes it a little bit different, is that you don't actually have to see mold for these aflatoxins to be present. And aflatoxins are actually, they can be on, let me just see here. Right now in the sport mix, the Midwestern Pet Food sport mix, it's corn. And first of all, we should not be feeding corn to our pets. Really, we shouldn't be eating corn, and it has been so genetically modified. Like, the corn we eat today is not what corn looked like, 100 years ago. Corn today is not what corn originally was. It has been genetically modified, and I just personally, we still eat it sometimes. I'm not saying we never eat it, but we have drastically cut down on the amount of corn we eat, and my pets eat absolutely no corn. But it is actually, let me see if I can find here. It can be on all sorts. Aflatoxins aren't just on corn, they aren't just produced on corn. They can also be found in other foods as well, like grains, and I even think peanuts. So, but yeah, they can cause very serious illness and death. In fact, if we go to the Truth About Pet Food, there is currently a class action lawsuit. It was just filed on January 19th, 2021, and over 70 dogs have already died, dozens more are sick. And it is, again, it's Midwestern Pet Foods for their sport mix. And in the lawsuit, multiple owners of dogs that have already died are partaking in this class action lawsuit. And what's really interesting is that after the company became aware, and as part of the lawsuit, after Midwestern Pet Foods became aware of all these dogs dying, they tried two different things that are listed specifically in the class action lawsuit, and you can read that on the Truth About Pet Foods website. They tried two different things. One, they put up a notice on their website. That says that they only select the highest quality ingredients. They test and retest to ensure the health and safety of pets eating Midwestern Pet Foods, and that it relies upon, that Midwestern Pet Foods, that they rely upon testing by their suppliers of the ingredients, and then they also do their own testing of ingredients upon receipt of the facility, and they test the final product. Now, after the lawsuit, after they were, I guess, served with the papers of a lawsuit, they took that information down from their websites because it was obviously not true, because they couldn't have tested the product coming into their facility, and they couldn't have tested the final product, and they would have found the aflatoxins, right? So they took that off their website. The second thing they did, and again, all of this information is available in the class action lawsuit documents, which you can find at the Truth About Pet Foods website. They also tried to buy off the claimants so that this wouldn't go forward. But they actually found there was a veterinarian who did test the pet food that was found to have killed at least some of the dogs, and they found 525 parts per billion aflatoxin in the sample. And according to the FDA, what their threshold is, the limit of aflatoxin. First of all, we shouldn't be accepting any aflatoxins in our pet food, but the threshold is a limit of 20 parts per billion. So it was up to 26 times the FDA's threshold for acceptable levels of aflatoxins. So again, all of that information is available in the documentation for the class action lawsuit. So if you feed Midwestern Pet Foods Sport Mix, or if you know anybody who feeds Midwestern Pet Foods Sport Mix, I would definitely make sure that they know about this recall, that they know about this lawsuit. If their dog is on it, switch them immediately, and if get rid of it, toss it, throw it away. And in my opinion, we should all be switching our pets to the best of our ability to a fresh food diet. If you have been following me for any length of time, you know that we started the 2021 Pet Food Challenge this month, January 2021. And the Pet Food Challenge is all about making small changes and taking 20% of the kibble out of your dog's bowl and replacing it with a fresh whole food. And there's a whole list of whole fresh foods that are safe to feed your pet. And that is, I did a video, I believe it went live January 6th, 2021, so you can find that on my channel. And if you want to follow along and take part in the Pet Food Challenge, make sure to check my Patreon link in the description, because we're doing that over on Patreon. I would definitely recommend taking part. There's so many wonderful foods that you have available in your house that you are buying regularly for your family already, that you can feed your pet, that are are wonderful to feed. And even if you're, preparing proteins for you and your family, and you have scraps left over, or you're cleaning the meat, and that's a wonderful thing to provide to your pet. So there's so many wonderful things we can do to provide our pets with better foods. And if you're just joining me, we've been talking about aflatoxins. We've been talking about the Midwestern Pet Foods Sport Mix recall and the class action lawsuit that has been filed just a few days ago against Midwestern Pet Foods. We also talked a little bit about the documentary Pet Food. I definitely recommend this. And so I really want to challenge each and every one of you to take part in the 2021 Pet Food Challenge. Whether you go to my channel after this video is over, check out the video. It went live, I believe, January 6th, and I talk all about all the different foods that you can use in the 2021 Pet Food Challenge to replace just a little bit of your dog's kibble and provide them with something that has really wonderful nutrition that's going to be amazing for you. You're going to see a huge difference in your dog's skin and coat. You're going to see a huge difference in their focus, in their mental aptitude. You're going to see so many wonderful differences, even in their teeth and their dental health, if you decide to go ahead and provide them with some raw meaty bones. Last Sunday's live, we talked all about raw meaty bones. So definitely go check that out if you haven't already seen it. I also wanted to bring up an article that Rodney Habib actually wrote for the Dogs Naturally magazine, which and I'll provide all of these links to you guys in the description of this video when we're done. So definitely make sure to come back to this video to get all of the links. But he talked about corn and why it's really not a great food for us, and also not a great food to feed our dogs, and how corn is kind of a breeding ground for these aflatoxins as well as mycotoxins, which are different forms of mold, and they're toxic molds is what they are, and our pets are eating them. And they're really, corn is one of the biggest crops that has this issue with, it can be found in other grains, but it's just a wonderful article. I will link it in the description below, but a lot of corn, especially feed grade corn, is contaminated, and we really need to make sure that we're paying attention to what we're putting in our pets' bodies. And the best way to do that is by providing them, actually making the food ourselves is the number one way. And the second way is by purchasing a food from a company that you trust, that you have done your research on, that you know that when they're acquiring their ingredients, they're doing everything that they possibly can to that they actually are doing testing. First of all, when you talked about this so many times on this channel, but it just really bears repeating, because the way that kibble is made, they take whatever ingredients that they're using, whether it's a chicken food or it's a beef food or it's a salmon food, whatever it is, whatever ingredients they're using, and they render it down. It usually goes through 2, 3, sometimes more rendering processes. And by the time they're done rendering that food, it looks like sawdust almost, and there is little to no nutritional value left in that food. There are a couple of reasons why they do it this way. One is because they generally don't have the best quality ingredients up front, so they have to cook them. They really have to cook them down because they are not the best quality ingredients. And I don't want to go too much into ingredient sourcing. That's really for another video, and I have talked about that already on my channel. But another reason is that when you get it into the final rendered state, and it looks kind of like a sawdust, it's very dry. So it's easy for them to store it. They don't have to refrigerate it. They don't have to worry about anything but keeping it dry, basically. So they can keep it in silos, and really the storage is abysmal, but they don't have to do a lot to it. They don't have to put money into keeping it refrigerated. It's not fresh meat anymore, right? So by the time they're done with the rendering process, and again, if you want to know more about it, this documentary is amazing, Pet Food. By the time they're done rendering it, there's little to no nutritional value left. And so to be able to provide you with a food that is nutritionally balanced or meets minimum nutritional guidelines for your dog or your cat, they have to add nutrients back into it. And the way they do that generally is by adding in what they call a premix. And these premixes are chemical compounds that are created to mimic the nutritional values, whether vitamin A, vitamin B, vitamin C, all these vitamins and minerals, iron and calcium, all these vitamins and minerals that your pet needs to meet the minimum nutritional values. So these pet food companies, what they are supposed to be doing, and what they tell the public they do, and what they tell the FDA they do, is that when they get these premixes in, they test them to make sure they're accurate. We know, because of many recalls over the past few years, that this isn't actually happening. And many pet food companies have had to admit that they haven't tested the premixes before using them, in addition to that, once everything is combined and put together and they've got the final product, before it leaves the production facility, they're supposed to test it again. And the pet food companies tell the consumer that they do that they test. They tell the FDA that they test. But again, we have found over the past few years with all of these recalls that have come out, they have had to admit that they're not really doing that, even though they're supposed to do that. So even though they're telling you they do that, they don't actually do that. So many of these premixes come over from China, by the way. So even though a bag can say that it's manufactured in the USA, make sure you know where the ingredients are coming from, because a lot of the ingredients, especially these premixes, are actually coming in from China. And they are not nutritionally balanced like they're supposed to be. Even though they tell the pet food company that's buying them that they are balanced and whatever. The pet food company is supposed to test. We know now that they're not doing that the way they're supposed to be doing it. Maybe they do sometimes, maybe, I don't know. But we know that they're not doing it all the time. And it's still happening. And there is proof right now that it's still happening, because there is yet another recall in January of 2021. This one is Pedigree, which is owned by Mars. And if you're following along on the 2021 Pet Food Challenge on Patreon, if you're not, check the link in the description below to join me over on Patreon. But if you are following me over on Patreon, I posted a picture of it's like this almost like a family tree, right? That shows you all of these pet food companies and who actually owns the pet food companies. So Mars, who you generally think of as a candy company, because they do own a ton of like the candy bars that you see that are out for you to purchase. Mars has not been a candy company for many, many years, because the majority of their income now comes from the pet industry, whether it's pet food. They also own veterinary clinics across the U.S., so they have their hand. They also own baby food, so there are some baby foods, not all baby foods. So they have their hands everywhere. Pedigree is owned by Mars, and there is yet another recall for high vitamin D levels. We know that too much vitamin D can also cause illness and death in dogs. It has happened year after year after year for the past 4 or 5 years. And already in January 2021, January 21st, 2021, this particular article I'm looking at, it's been published. Pedigree already has a high vitamin D recall this year. So we know that they're not checking the premixes when they come in. We know that they're not checking the final product before it goes out. So excess vitamin D levels in dogs. Clinical symptoms include loss of appetite, excessive thirst and or urination, vomiting, drooling, and weight loss. Prolonged exposure or very high levels of vitamin D in dogs can cause more serious health issues such as renal dysfunction and failure, which leads to death. And this is all incredibly unfortunate and 100% preventable. I also want to just throw in here, because we're talking about it, I have not seen an actual recall come out of this, but there are some really horrible stories already starting this year on social media about Purina Pro Plan. So if you are feeding Purina Pro Plan, you might want to check in on your dogs and see how they're feeling, see how they're doing. You might want to consider moving away from that. So 2019, the big vitamin D recall was from Hill's. So Hill's Pet Food, and by the way, that recall, nobody's talking about it anymore, but the FDA, and it's on the FDA's website, the USDA and the FDA in November of 2019, they sent Hill's Pet Nutrition a letter letting them know that they have not sufficiently responded basically to the recall. Like, we know that they admitted that they didn't test the premix coming in. They admitted that they didn't test the product before it left the final product before it left the facility, and they said, you know, your response didn't address the root cause of this incident. And that's kind of where it has all, like, nobody has talked about it really since then. So I mean, these are pretty big issues, pretty big concerns. And the last thing I want to, before we move on, Ken, you're doing great. Thanks so much for being here, Ken. I really appreciate you being here and commenting. Let me know if you have a dog or a cat, what kind of dog, how old they are, what you feed them. I would love to hear about that. Thank you for joining me. So really quickly before we kind of end the segment about recalls, and specifically there are 2 current recalls, Aflatoxins and Midwest Pet Foods, which is the sport mix recall, and then there is another recall for Mars and their pedigree for high vitamin D levels. I feel like this is just every single year we're seeing high vitamin D levels in one dog food or the other. Like I just said, in 2019 it was Hill's. Now it's a pedigree, which is a Mars brand. But if you don't know who Dr. Falconer is, he is a holistic veterinarian. He's currently doing a lot of work in India, I believe. But I'm on his newsletter, and one of the emails he sent recently, you know, obviously I had thought about it, but I hadn't planned on putting it in today's video until I went back to that email and I read it again. He was talking about the recall for aflatoxins in the Midwestern Pet Food Sport Mix, because that's, you know, what the biggest recall is right now that people are talking about. Again, he's saying aflatoxin is a mold byproduct often associated with illness and death, and we have already seen more than 70 dogs have died from this sport mix. But what he's saying, and again, I hadn't really planned on putting it in today's live, but it's really interesting. These big pet food companies, they are owned primarily by big candy companies. We've got, you know, Smucker's, Nestle, Mars are the 3 big ones that own the majority of the pet food. And let me just get caught up really here. Angela says, how is Call of the Wild? You know, Call of the Wild is, I'd have to look and see. I don't know off the top of my head who owns Call of the Wild. In fact, let me see if I can pull it up here real quick. If I can find who owns Call of the Wild. It's not popping out to me. I'm gonna have to look, Angela, and see who actually owns Call of the Wild. If it has been, because the thing is that most of these pet food companies, they start out as a small pet food company, and as they grow, the larger pet food companies acquire them. So I'm not sure if that has happened yet or not. I know when Call of the Wild, again, when it was a small pet food company and they were just starting out, they weren't terrible. But they are still kibble. So JR says, we have a rescue dog from Mexico. Yes, we do. She's awesome. What is Call of the Wild, JR, is a kibble. It's a pet food company. So Ken says, you have a cat that's 12 years old and overweight. Well, Ken, I would strongly recommend switching. At 12 years old, it can be difficult, and I understand that, especially with cats, because I have cats that are older than that. And I have tried and tried and tried. Some of them, I have been able to feed them fresh food. Some of them are just resistant. So the earlier you start, the better off you are, but even at 12 years old, you could do it. The way you transition a cat to a fresh food diet is, first you have to stop the all-you-can-eat buffet. Start feeding meals throughout the day, and then start transitioning one meal at a day at a time to wet food. And then as you transition to wet food, you start slowly transitioning, taking a little bit of wet food away and start adding in a little bit of fresh food. But even just by switching your cat over to wet food, I think you're going to see a huge, huge difference in their weight. And they're going to be a much healthier weight. And I say that because I have seen that with my cats as well. So I would definitely recommend working on that with your cat, Ken. But thank you so much for commenting. I really appreciate it. JR says, what kind of cat yes, Ken, trying to get off dry food. That's the whole goal, right? The very first step is to stop the buffet. Start feeding meals. 3 meals throughout the day will be fine. And then start switching 1 meal a day at a time to wet food. And I think you'll get there a lot quicker than you think you can. Jennifer says, 19-month-old English lab, feed him 4 healthy chicken, rice, large breed. Dinner he gets half cup fresh food, protein, veggies, cooked and frozen. Okay, awesome. So Jennifer, I think you're following along with the pet food challenge, and that's awesome. Angela says, only supposed to be one. Call the Carry at Petco. Not sure who it's made by. So yeah, Call of the Wild, I would definitely have to look and see if Call of the Wild has been purchased by a large pet food company. I feel like, because they started, I think, here in California, and I think they might have, I will look into it, Angela. Ken says, thank you, you're very welcome. I wish you all the best. Let me know how it goes. Check in with me and let me know how it's going with your cat. So just to finish out what I was, my thought before, thank you guys so much for commenting. I love getting your comments here in the chat, and I will definitely call them out. So if you're, I'll call you, I'll let you know that I got your comment and how much I appreciate it. But what Dr. Faulkner, excuse me, was saying, and I don't know if you remember, gosh, time is just like a blur to me anymore. I don't know. Let me know if it's the same for you. It might have been 2019. 2018, maybe, I'm thinking 2019. Maybe 2018. I don't know. 2020 is just like, has got me all messed up. It's like, it was a whole year, and yet it wasn't a whole year. I don't know. Anyway, so I think it was 2019. The FDA just cracked down on raw pet food companies, and they gave them literally 0 leeway. They said you have 0% of any pathogen, which is crazy because they allow kibble companies putting out kibble and wet foods to have salmonella in the food. They allow them, as we've just talked about today, to have aflatoxins in the foods. As long as it doesn't, and I'm sure there are tons of other toxins and carcinogens that they allow to have in the foods, as long as they don't exceed a certain amount, right? Which is crazy. And then they go to raw food companies and they say, you know, they have a 0 tolerance policy. And this was so bad that if you have a cat, you might remember Rad Cat had an amazing line of raw cat food, and it was, I mean, literally for some people it was their saving grace because they didn't use bone for their source of calcium, they used eggshells. And that tends, for a lot of cats, especially older cats that you're trying to transition away from kibble and wet food, using an eggshell or using eggshell for calcium instead of bone was much more palatable. So a lot of people were able to feed Rad Cat where they weren't able to feed other raw pet foods, and the way the FDA cracked down on raw pet foods with their zero tolerance policy, it was really crazy, because they actually would allow people to go to a store and buy the raw pet food. Thank you. We're getting a delivery. And the delivery guy was like outside the door, I guess on his cell phone or whatever, talking. And thank you, Kim. Good job. Yeah. That is a good job. I know. I appreciate it. Everything's okay. Okay. Anyway, and transport it unrefrigerated and let it set out, wherever they were taking it to, and then test it. So obviously it wasn't like they weren't following the guidelines on the packaging as far as proper, storage and anyway. So it was very, very biased, very, very skewed, and so Rad Cat actually went out of business because of this, because of all the truly unfair practices. And so Dr. Falconer kind of brought this up in his email, and he was like, there's a zero tolerance policy for anything in raw foods that are commercially available, yet we allow, the FDA allows kibble companies to have all of these things in their food. You are much more likely, you or your dog, well, dogs are pretty resistant to it, but you are much more likely to get salmonella from improperly handling kibble than you are from raw food. It is just, it's amazing. There's so much that these kibble companies are allowed to get away with that raw food companies, they literally have a zero tolerance for them, and it's very biased. So he brought that up, and I just wanted to bring it up. Jennifer says, I am sure for healthy, made by Diamond, what I've heard. I've heard of Diamond Pet Food, and Jennifer, I'll look into who owns them as well. So I've got Diamond Pet Food and Call of the Wild. I'm going to look into who owns those two companies and let you guys know. Melanie says, we feed our dog and cats now fresh, dry food. Our puppy is 8 months old. Pomsky. Cats are male and female seniors. Oldest is 17. I'm on... Oh, are you in Canada? I'm on a very low income. Love my babies. Yeah, I know, Melanie. I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions about feeding our pets fresh food, is that it's expensive. It doesn't have to be expensive. It can be. For sure it can be, right? But it doesn't have to be. And especially if we shop at and I don't know what's available to you specifically, Melanie, but I know here we have a lot of Asian markets, and the produce, the meats, you can get organ meats that you can't find at the regular grocery stores, and the price will just blow you away. Not only if you shop there for your food, but if you shop there for your pet's food as well, what you buy to make your pet's food. You can save a ton of money, and the thing is, they go through so much of it is fresh. It is super, super fresh food. Of course, you have to check, at your local markets, but in general, from what we have found, it is super fresh, incredibly well priced, much cheaper for the most part, much, much cheaper than what we find at our regular grocery stores. So there are definitely ways where you can feed a fresh food diet and not break the bank, for sure. So Ken says, can cats get COVID? That's really interesting, Ken, because at the beginning of COVID, I actually think I even did a video about this. Um, at the beginning of all of this in the US, which was last March 2020, it might have been into April, there were a couple of, I think they were tigers at a zoo who got it. The thing with any coronaviruses, there are a lot of them, and they're all variations of the cold virus, of the flu virus. Ken says, I think I had it asymptomatic. Yeah, a lot of people I know think they may have had it and were asymptomatic. My husband, we think he may have had it. He actually got really sick for a very, very short period of time. But we don't know, because at that time it was very early on, and if you were not sick enough to be hospitalized, they weren't testing you, so we don't know. But anyway, so cats, there are some strains of coronavirus that are zoonotic, and there are some strains of coronavirus that are non-zoonotic. And zoonotic means that it is transferable between species. So there are actually some coronaviruses that only exist in certain animal species, and then there are others that exist between species. And this particular strain, they did seem to find in a couple of cats. And I will say, this is purely anecdotal. Around the same time my husband got sick, 2 of my cats got sick. They were they had really pretty severe kitty colds, is what I would call them. They lasted just a couple of days, and I monitored them, and I gave them extra, I provided them fresh foods, and I was feeding probiotics and prebiotics, and I also fed them some L-lysine, which helps boost the immune system. So they got over it in just a couple of days. So I think it's completely anecdotal, but very interesting, to me at least. So I think that this particular strain, of course, we're dealing with multiple strains now, according to the media. I don't know how true that is, but according to the media, we're dealing with multiple strains now. So I think that it is possible to transmit it, according to what they found in a couple of tigers. I haven't heard of any animals since then getting it. So it could have been a different strain that was so closely related that they didn't report that it was a different strain. I don't really know. But again, like I said, completely anecdotal. Around the time my husband got sick, 2 of my cats got sick. But it's also really interesting. I have more than 2 cats, and only 2 of them got sick. And also that my husband got sick and I didn't get sick. So, it's really, really interesting. When we talk about viruses and diseases that are zoonotic, that can transfer between species, and how some of us get really, have a lot of symptoms and others of us don't. I just think that's really super interesting. But yeah, so I want to say again, thank you guys so much for being here with me today. I like when I can bring you really useful information, and I hope today's information was very useful. It's, to me, I had already started transitioning my dogs to a fresh food diet prior to seeing this movie or documentary. But once I saw it, my husband was like full on board, and we just completely switched over to commercially available raw foods. Right now we're feeding Answers Pet Food to our dog and to my cats that will eat it, and I actually have some that will eat it. We have been feeding Tiki Cat raw food, and I just opened up some Tuckers. I heard good things about Tuckers. and they have been eating that as well. So let's see. Melanie says, my health does not allow me to prepare a diet for my fur babies. I'm chronically ill. Is the brand Now Fresh dry dog and cat food okay for my Pomsky? I don't know of the brand Now Fresh, Melanie. I will say, I think you're in I think you posted that you're in Canada, so that might be why I'm not sure about Now Fresh. I just haven't heard of it, but I can look into it for sure. Anybody who is interested in the 2021 Pet Food Challenge or would like me to look into, helping them with their pets' diets, definitely make sure to reach out to me, and you can join me on Patreon as well. And that's where the 2021 Pet Food Challenge, I'm posting about that every week, and different foods that you can supplement in your pet's diet. So I have a few pet food companies that I'm going to look up after this video, or in the next day or two. So I'll follow up with you guys. But so definitely check me out over on Patreon to follow along with the 2021 Pet Food Challenge. There's also exclusive content over there. Check all the links in the description for that. And yeah, so I think I've gotta go get ready to do my one chip challenge. If you guys are interested in that, make sure to check out my link tree for the link to my other channel. Yes, I'm in Canada, Melanie. I do know that Dr. Karen Becker is working on, I think they're calling it the Canadian Pet Food Project. I'd have to look into it. But they are looking at making pet food in Canada that is fresh food and affordable for people in Canada. It seems to be like the reason they're doing this in Canada is because it's easier to get it done in Canada, because of all of the lobbyists and regulation and the corruption with the USDA and the FDA here in the US. It's really hard to get good quality fresh pet food on the market here, so I think that's why they're doing it in Canada. So Melanie, I'll look into that Canadian Pet Food Project as well, and kind of loop you in on that. If you've never heard of Dr. Karen Becker, definitely check her out. She's the one who is spearheading this thing, so I'll look into that as well. Ken, thank you so much for being here. Melanie, JR, Jennifer, Angela, thank you guys so much for participating and posting in the chat. I love it when you guys participate. It makes the time fly by. In fact, normally I do these things for about 30 minutes and we're already more than 45 minutes in. So definitely check all the links in the description. Everything I talked about today, I'm going to update the description and provide all of the links for you. And so come back to this video in just a little bit and get all of those links so you can read about everything we talked about today. Thank you so much for being here, and definitely make sure to look down there at that subscribe button. If it's red, click it and turn it gray, and then click the bell to select all notifications. That way YouTube can notify you if I post a new video or if I go live. Melanie says thank you. Yes, I will definitely look into all of these things and update. If you are, make sure you're subscribed to the channel, and maybe we'll even talk about it a little bit more next week. So thank you guys so much for being here with me today. I appreciate you, and let me just go, even after this video is over, if you still have questions, go ahead and post them in the comments, because I do, I answer, I want to say I answer every comment people leave on my videos. I hope I do. I hope I'm not missing any. I really try to make sure this is a community and a place for you guys to get your questions answered. Thank you so much for being here with me today, and I'll see you guys in the next video.